Joe, I will kick this off to you. Let's talk about the Auburn Tigers. Where do you see them in 2024?
Yeah, I have been a bullish team or a bullish individual on what Hugh Freeze can do for this team. He has been a coach that has not only found success with lesser talent in some of his stops throughout his coaching career, but he's also been an individual that has done a great job of recruiting and building rosters. I think that the future for Auburn is in great hands. I think that the 2024 recruiting class that they had is an indication that they're going to continue to build. And I think that Walker White in a couple of seasons is going to be a very, very talented quarterback in the SEC. But after I dug deep on Auburn, I think we need to be realistic that the most that they're going to win this season is 8 wins. I think that is a very realistic outcome considering they went 6-7 this past year. They've got a tough schedule. They've got some winnable games. I'm really focused on the fact that I just don't know who the pass catchers for this team are going to be. They have needed, and we talked about it in the winter portal. We talked about it in the spring portal. They needed to get a quarterback to compete with Payton Thorne, and they needed to get some receivers. I have high expectations for Cam Coleman. I really think that Cam Coleman is going to be an unbelievable player, and I wouldn't be shocked if he's not one of the best freshman wide receivers in the country. Could totally see that happening. But Keandre Lambert-Smith is not a number one guy, and the rest of the receiver group leaves a lot to be desired. I'm just very worried that their passing attack, which was such an issue last year when they ran the ball so damn well, is going to hurt them again, and it's going to hold them back in important games that they'll need to win in order to get past that 8-4 hump.
Why do you think that they weren't as active in pursuing a quarterback?
I don't think they had a lot of options. I think that they tried and they
let me rephrase that. Let me rephrase this quite well. I don't agree with that. Let me tell you why. Because tampering is not, you can tamper, right? Like coaches are out in the public saying about their kids being tampered with. He could have instantly tampered with anybody. Now, I do think he tried to get his quarterback at Liberty. That didn't really
try to get Cam Ward. He tried to get Riley Leonard. They were brought up for a lot of the top quarterbacks.
Right. So him striking out on those guys and continuously not going, do you think that he has any faith in Payton Thorne? Look, I don't think Payton Thorne needs to be for what Auburn would want to be next year. I don't think he needs to have this Joe Burrow leap.
No.
Right? And I don't think he will. But I'm going to give a little bit of grace to Payton Thorne. Can I tell you why? I think that it's interesting that, Joe, that we have seen multiple quarterbacks that have started at other places or even that haven't started at other places have a mediocre or average at best first year with a new program, especially when they go into the spring window. I mean, look, you can look at the Heisman Trophy winner from this year and say, well, hey, man, he kind of comes in a little bit late. He's in a system for the first year and then takes a massive jump. I'm not saying Payton Thorne is going to be that, but I do think that he does do better, Joe, than he did a season ago. That's number one. But they really, really, really attack the portal defensively. They go and get Keyron Crawford, the edge, who had 10.5 tackles for loss last year, 5.5 sacks with 58 tackles. They go and get Isaiah Rakes, who was a rotational player last year for A&M, but I do think is going to be a starter for them and can really rotate, along with Phillip Bliddy from Indiana. But here's the thing, though. None of those guys that they got on the defensive line, and they got multiple, along with Gage Keys, none of those guys really have production. Like Isaiah Rakes doesn't have production. Gage Keys does not have production. The only one is Keyron Crawford. But, Joe, I got to admit something. They're returning 3 massive pieces defensively. You know, I look at Eugene, the linebacker, who had 5 sacks, 8.5 tackles for loss. You got McLeod that's returning, who also had 10.5 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks. And then Keldrick Falk, who, Joe, a lot of people are high on for Auburn. I'm not 1,000% certain. I hear what you're saying about offensively. Joe, if I'm a team that's playing Auburn, I don't know if I look at what they've added in the transfer portal along with what they have returning defensively and say to myself, hey, Hugh Freeze is known for what they do on the offensive side of the football. But, man, defensively, I think they could be a little bit scary. The only question I would have for them, Joe, the secondary that they have, no interceptions, under 10 pass breakups in that secondary, which could be scary with an inexperienced secondary, because there are going to be times where your secondary or when your front seven has an off day and your secondary, you got to lean on them. But I do think that they have pieces. Jarquez Hunter returns. Cam Coleman's going to be there. I do think they've gotten better. And I do think that the biggest addition that nobody wants to talk about is clearly Percy Lewis from Mississippi State.
Yeah.
The left tackle. So I do think, Joe, that they have gotten better from an overall roster standpoint from a year ago. However, Joe, look, I'm going to say this, and it's going to be such a dud. I could see them being 7-5, 8-4. I could see them getting to 9 wins because of the fact I do think that front seven defensively, Joe, you got 3 interior defensive linemen. You legitimately now have over 30 sacks. By the way, A&M had the best defensive line in the SEC last year. They were hovering around 45 to 50 at the end of the year. So you're adding to that. All I'm saying is when you can stop the run and get after the quarterback, look, let me give an example. I think Hugh Freeze is a better coach than Jimbo Fisher in today's world. We saw what a really good front seven that had that much production can do. A&M was in every game, Joe. I mean, outside of Miami there at the end, okay, it is what it is. I just look at them and say, man, they got a lot of really good individualized pieces. If they can scheme some things up and just be moderate offensively, I think that their ceiling is 9-3. I do think their floor is 7-5. I think the 2 games clearly, okay, that can get them there, they got to split their 2 rivalry games. If they can split Georgia, Alabama, Joe, I think they're cooking with grease, and then you go into a year 3 and you're like, hey, man, Auburn might have something here.
I don't think they're going to split those games. The games that I highlighted,
they can beat Alabama.
I don't Anything in that can beat Alabama. Alabama still has a very, very good roster. They're not.
No, they almost beat them a season ago. Like what are we discussing here? By the way, they almost
but that was goofy
as hell.
That was
every year that Joe,
I know that the
DJ Finley almost beat Bryce Young. Like what?
But okay, you were even just about to say that game gets goofy as hell. Just because that game is close does not, and they should have won, doesn't mean anything for the upcoming season. Anything can happen in that game. So I don't really.
The point. You can't make a determination that they can't split it. Then
they're definitely not beating Georgia. They're definitely not beating Georgia. They caught Georgia off guard with a lot of injuries last year. That's not going to happen.
I never said that they would. I said they need to split it.
I think that the games that save them are Kentucky, Texas A&M, and Oklahoma. If they come out with 2 wins against any of those teams. Hold
on now. They ain't beating Kentucky. Hot take. They're not beating Kentucky.
But that's why I'm IDing those 3 games. If you win 2 of them, you go 8-4.
I mean, I gave them a pretty high ceiling here. I mean, look, Auburn is right, Joe, I'm telling you now, you can't convince me. You cannot convince me at this current moment that name a defense not named Georgia right now in the SEC, not portal additions, that have 3 defensive dudes that are returning that are this good.
I don't know off the top of my head, like 3 defensive dudes, but I think that Kentucky's defensive.
But those guys are coming in from the portal, though. They had to have
all of them are.
Joe, Kentucky does not have returning 15 sacks.
Look, I think, though, that what's important to acknowledge here, yes, there is talent coming back on their front seven. But the 2 biggest strengths for them last year that helped them go 6-6 in the regular season, almost beat Alabama, play Georgia close, be the annoying team in the SEC last year that was putting up a fight when nobody expected them to. Might I remind everyone, I was one of the few people who said that they were capable of going 500. Everyone said that they were going to be terrible last year. That front seven, their defensive line, and their run game were the two biggest strengths. They, to take another step forward, needed to add to their receiving core. They needed to improve in the passing game. And also, you mentioned it, they're losing Naheem Pritchett, they're losing Jalen Simpson, and they're losing DJ James. That's three important.
Is very inexperienced. And let me tell you this, Joe. They are going to have to. So to your point, their strengths, they're going to have to lean in on those massively.
But this is why I'm fearful is not the word I'm going for. But
you're hesitant.
I'm extremely hesitant, and I've been a supporter of Auburn and Hugh Freeze. And again, I thought that this hire was fantastic, but to see what a lot of other teams have done around Auburn, they're just not there yet. That's all I'm trying to get at. I'm not saying that they're going to stink and they're going to get embarrassed. That's not at all what I'm trying to say here. There's other teams that I think that are far more inept and pathetic than Auburn is in the SEC. I just think that with the way that Kentucky looks right now, with the way that even Texas A&M looks really good right now. Oklahoma has made moves, and we're giving them no shot to succeed early on, but they're still going to be a competitive football team. There's just too many other teams, I think, around them that are far more balanced, have a better starting quarterback, have better receivers, just better general depth. It is hard to turn around Auburn as quickly as Hugh Freeze is trying to do it when Brian Harsin set him up with such a shitty roster.
It's not an excuse anymore, though.
But wait. But the whole complete like portal attack, like rebuild thing, we have agreed is not like a definitive fix your team strategy.
Correct. However, you can't have so when the portal really became a massive thing, you had three coaches that headline the coaching carousel. Brent Venables, okay, went 6-6. Now, can he be Brent Venables and go 9-3? Let's see. You had Lincoln Riley that got to a Pac-12 championship game with a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. And then you had Brian Kelly that won the SEC West. Now, I could make the argument that Brian Kelly had a worse situation than what really Hugh Freeze had at Auburn. I mean, Brian Kelly legitimately went into a building, Joe, and he did not. I mean this, like he had two defensive players that were returning. Two. He had 39 scholarship players.
I was just talking about Payton Thorne, and I was saying that I think that he is given far too much criticism, and I think that the way that you explained doesn't need to be Joe Burrow, doesn't need to go off on some ridiculous run, but he needs to push himself into the top fifth of quarterbacks in the SEC. He needs to be in that upper conversation, and it makes sense for it to happen. Good offensive head coach.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Good offensive head coach in his second year with the team with a lot of snaps under his belt at another school. That stuff works.
I do think that Payton Thorne is actually a better athlete than we give him credit for.
You said the same exact thing. He's a very good winner. He ran for I want to get his total against Alabama, but he had a great game.
He ran for over 500 yards. He was their second leading rusher last year. Right? Like, and guys, my lights went out. I don't know what happens here. But the bill is paid.
He had 57 yards rushing against Alabama.
I think it was the Georgia game, wasn't it, that he ran for a little bit more? I think he got to the outside.
He was 5 for 16 for 91 yards against Alabama.
I think what we would need to look at is because those sacks get taken out in rushing yards, what is his net total rushing yards? Right. So that would give you a clear understanding.
92 against Georgia.
92 against Georgia. Yeah, that was the game that he really kind of showed. And if you can run on them, you can run on anybody. Joe, I think this is, to your point, let me add on to this. I get mad when I do it to myself. That's why I'm not as super critical on quarterbacks as most people are. I think that, Joe, let me give you a couple of guys that are examples, okay? I look at Brady Cook year 1 to year 2. You can say what you want, but the kid improved. I look at guys like Stetson Bennett. He improved. Burrow, Daniels. Those dudes were on different levels. But I can name quarterbacks every single year that a lot of people are out on. Graham Mertz, okay? Like Graham Mertz legitimately was a guy that, and I'm not taking a shot at you.
I know.
I'm just saying that we got to be a little bit more lenient when it comes to a guy going into a new system. It's a big deal, right? Like, it's a massive deal when a guy has another year. Now, is he going to light the world up? No, I don't. I don't think that he will. But here's another truth. He, compared to what Payton Thorne had a year ago, so I talked a lot about the offensive side of the ball. What Payton Thorne had a year ago to work with on the outside isn't remotely even close to the talent that he has now.
Are you going off of Lambert Smith and Cam Williams? Is that what you're going off of? Cam Coleman, sorry.
Joe, both of those dudes are better than what he had. A ketchup packet and a taco hot sauce on both boundaries, okay? He had a packet of mustard in the slot, okay? There's a reason guys like Coy Moore are hitting the portal, okay? I'm just saying we got to look at it in a totality too. And look, I think they're going to be better in the running game. I think they're going to be better along their offensive line. Here is, and I will say this, okay? I am going to question Auburn fans, the ones that really know. I think at the end of the year last year, there were some things that went on with that team. That's why their DC moved on. Okay? There was some dysfunction. So, as high as I am on Hugh Freeze, and you know how much I love him as a play caller, there are things for me that I do wonder, like, hey, man, if you ended the year like that last year and you had coaches leaving, how is that culture being formed? And look, people, Joe, I legitimately, and we'll talk about this in the portal, if you have a good culture, I think I will rate you higher than some more talented teams, right? Like it's just how I roll. So we'll see. What else do we need to or go with or finish on the Auburn Tigers here?
The last take that I had is in relation to what you just said with Cam Coleman. I think that Payton Thorne's improvement is important. Cam Coleman, in order for me to feel better about their offense, he needs to have like a freshman All-American type season. And I don't even truly know if he contributes, but he's better than a lot of the guys that they have in that receiver room, so he should. But what I'm getting at here, if he has a freshman All-American type year, that's where the 9-3 comes into play. That's where
I think that's their ceiling, right? Like I think it's their ceiling. And listen, I don't know, with better offensive line play and Hugh calling plays, okay, I don't know if they're just not going to be better offensively. Look, I'm not out on Payton Thorne. I'm going to be. I know that Payton Thorne has gotten a lot of criticism from a lot of people. I'm not out on him. Look, I'm old enough to remember now. Payton Thorne did lead the Michigan State team to being highly competitive, right? Like we saw him, okay, at Michigan State, and I thought they were getting a really good quarterback, to be honest. When he has things around him, go pop on the Michigan State film the year that, what was the year, Joe? They won 10 games with Mel Tucker. Okay, what did he have? The running back,
Coleman, Walker.
Keon Coleman and
Kenneth Walker.
Kenneth Walker, that's with the Seahawks, right?
Yep.
So an established running game and a bona fide number one. It's not like the Big Ten sucks. I mean, now they got boat raced by Ohio State. Okay, it is what it is. But regardless, if he's got pieces around him, are we going to get the Payton Thorne that can be serviceable, or are we going to be the Payton Thorne that won't be? That's the ultimate question. In reference to your thoughts on Cam Coleman, what do you think I'm about to say? I'm going to let you say what you think I'm about to say.
He's a freshman.
Bingo. I hold no expectations for freshmen ever. The only one, I made one exception in my career. One. The only person that I've ever done that for was Trevor Lawrence. Ever. Because I think it was just a different situation. He had everything built around him. Clemson was rolling. I'm not doing that for Cam Coleman. Now, can he come in and be like a guy like Evan Stewart was, that was highly regarded? Yeah. Sure. But I'm just not going to put that much weight on him year one. I just can't. I cannot do it.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. Bet online, where the game starts.